She had the smile that could stop a nation. The hair, the legs, the laugh, the image of sunshine and confidence. But when the cameras stopped rolling, the light faded fast. Catherine Bach, Daisy Duke, to millions was more than the denim fantasy America adored. She was a real woman caught inside the machine of fame, navigating pressures few ever survive intact. How does someone who gave the world its dream of freedom end up caged by it? Stay with this story, because behind the poster, behind the laughter, is the truth Hollywood never showed you. The year was 1979, when America was still searching for something pure to believe in. Vietnam was over, Watergate had broken trust, and the country needed a reason to smile again. Then came the Dukes of Hazzard. Friday nights turned into Southern escapism, fast cars, comic outlaws, and one woman who could disarm the law with a wink. Catherine Bach didn't just play Daisy Duke, she defined her. It wasn't just acting, it was alchemy. But Catherine's story began far from the Georgia dirt roads of the show's set. She was born Catherine Bachman in Warren, Ohio in 1954, and raised on a sprawling ranch in South Dakota. Her father, a rancher of German descent, was strict but loving. Her mother, a Mexican-American nurse, was free-spirited and intuitive. Catherine grew up between two worlds, the discipline of farm life and the warmth of Latin family roots. She rode horses, fixed fences, and learned to do everything herself. That self-reliance would define her life long after the cameras faded. When she moved to Los Angeles to study drama at UCLA, she was a fish out of water. The industry wanted polished faces, manicured personas. Catherine was different, natural, confident, grounded. She supported herself with sewing and part-time jobs, often showing up to auditions wearing clothes she'd made. That authenticity turned heads, but it also made executives nervous. "She's too real," one casting agent reportedly said. Her first small roles came in The Midnight Man 1974 with Burt Lancaster and Thunderbolt, and Lightfoot 1974 alongside Clint Eastwood. They weren't breakout hits, but they showed her range, tough, quick-witted, and unafraid of strong scenes. Yet her next audition would define her forever. When she walked into the room for the Dukes of Hazzard audition, producers were expecting a Southern belle stereotype. Instead, in walked Catherine Tall Bronze, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans. She radiated confidence. They hesitated at first, reportedly saying she was too classy for the role. Then she smiled, delivered her lines, and the decision was made. She wasn't the stereotype, they would build the stereotype around her. The series debuted on January 26, 1979. Within weeks, America was obsessed. Families tuned in for the humor, teenagers for the cars, and millions for Catherine Bach. Daisy Duke was funny, fierce, and effortlessly magnetic. Unlike many female TV characters of the time, she wasn't helpless or mean-spirited. She was clever, independent, and always one step ahead of the men around her. And then came the poster. A publicity shoot intended to promote the show captured Catherine leaning against the General Lee car in short denim shorts and a tied red shirt. The image exploded. The poster sold over 5 million copies. It was the single most popular promotional image in Warner Brothers history, second only to Farrah Fawcett's. Catherine became America's sweetheart overnight, but success is never simple in Hollywood. Behind the scenes, Catherine had little control over her image. The network marketed Daisy Duke as a fantasy, something to sell, not someone to respect. They printed her body measurements in magazines, scheduled risque photo shoots without consent, and even limited how she could speak publicly about her role. The same smile that made her famous became the symbol that boxed her in. Catherine fought for substance behind the surface. She requested that Daisy drive her own Jeep instead of being chauffeured, and that she work as a waitress or mechanic to earn her living on screen. She wanted Daisy to have dignity, not just sex appeal. Her suggestions were quietly implemented, and audiences responded. Fans loved that Daisy wasn't an accessory. She was part of the action. Still, the industry's gaze was relentless. For every compliment she received, there were questions about her body, her clothes, her appearance. Journalists ignored her craft to focus on her figure. She learned to answer politely, to smile through frustration. That was survival in late 1970s television, a world that celebrated women on camera but rarely respected them behind it. Hollywood at the time was transforming. The feminist movement had reached television, but progress was slow. Female stars like Linda Carter and Jaclyn Smith face similar pressures, carry the show smile through the sexism, never age, never complain. Catherine watched it all unfold and understood one truth. Image was power, but also a prison. By 1980, she was one of the most photographed women in the world. Her likeness appeared on lunchboxes, comic books, and action figures. The network made millions. Catherine earned a steady TV salary but no share of merchandising profits. She didn't complain publicly, but friends said she felt cheated. She had built the Daisy Duke brand, yet owned none of it. It was a common injustice of the time. Stars didn't profit from their icons. Studios did. Still, Catherine kept working. Her professionalism was legendary. She treated every crew member as an equal, brought food to set, and never behaved like a diva. She believed kindness was a strength, not a weakness. The cast became family. But as ratings soared, the show grew more chaotic. Creative differences, contract disputes, and exhaustion took their toll. Catherine tried to keep peace behind the scenes, but the atmosphere changed. When The Dukes of Hazzard finally ended in 1985 after 7 seasons, Catherine was suddenly adrift. For 6 years, she had been America's favorite cousin. Now she was unemployed and typecast. Casting directors saw only Daisy Duke. She was too famous for her own good, one producer later admitted. In the years that followed, she took smaller roles, tried new genres, but the industry's appetite had moved on. The 80s were the decade of excess MTV glamour soap operas supermodels. There was no room for the wholesome kind of fame she represented. And then quietly, Catherine disappeared from the spotlight. The lights dimmed, the fame cooled, and for the first time since she was 25, Catherine Bach found herself in silence. The phone stopped ringing, the photographers stopped calling, and Hollywood did what it always does, it moved on to the next face. For someone who had once been seen by nearly every household in America, the quiet could be deafening. But Catherine didn't resist it. At first, she embraced it. She took a breath for the first time in years. She no longer had to smile on cue or pose for strangers who thought they knew her. She could walk into a grocery store without being followed, sit by the window without makeup, and feel human again. It was a luxury most stars never experience until they're forgotten. For Catherine, anonymity was a kind of peace. But peace has a way of being misunderstood in Hollywood. In an industry built on speed and visibility, absence is treated like failure. Catherine's deliberate retreat looked to outsiders like a decline. Yet in truth, she was finally living a life that wasn't staged. She painted, cooked, and gardened. She spent long afternoons with her parents and visited old friends from her UCLA days who reminded her who she'd been before Daisy Duke existed. Then in 1990, something changed everything. Catherine met Peter Lopez. Peter wasn't an actor, wasn't a producer, wasn't part of the glitter machine. He was an entertainment lawyer, steady, smart, well-liked, but low profile. His world was built on confidentiality and ethics, not gossip and cameras. For a woman who had lived under constant scrutiny, that kind of stillness was magnetic. They married that same year in a private ceremony, attended by close friends, no tabloids, no headlines. It was the start of a different kind of story, one without scripts or directors. Their marriage was one of rare stability in an industry allergic to it. Catherine often said Peter was her anchor. Together they had 2 daughters, Sophia and Laura. They built a warm life in Encino, far from the chaos of studio lots. Catherine devoted herself to motherhood with the same dedication she once gave to acting. She attended every school event, volunteered for fundraisers, and became known around the neighborhood not as the famous Daisy Duke, but simply as Mrs. Lopez. Those years were quiet, ordinary, and exactly what she needed. She still received offers now and then, guest roles, talk show invitations, but she rarely accepted. Hollywood had changed. It was louder, faster, meaner. The studios that once courted her were now obsessed with youth franchise films and disposable stars. Catherine understood something most people in her business never do. Sometimes stepping away is the only way to survive. But fame has a long memory. In the mid-2000s, nostalgia began sweeping through television culture. Reruns of The Dukes of Hazzard aired on cable DVDs were released, and a new generation discovered Daisy Duke. Suddenly, Catherine's name was everywhere again. Magazines ran retrospectives. Fans who had grown up watching her were now introducing her to their children. The 2005 Dukes of Hazzard movie brought the franchise roaring back into pop culture. Catherine handled the attention with grace. She appeared at fan conventions and on talk shows smiling as audiences cheered for the original Daisy. She didn't compete with the modern remake. She knew what the original had meant to people. But when journalists asked if she ever resented being typecast, her answer was measured. "No," she said, "because Daisy gave me everything. But she also took a lot." That last sentence lingered, because by then Catherine had lived long enough to understand the full cost of the image she helped create. April 30th, 2010, the day everything changed. That morning, Catherine's husband, Peter Lopez, was found dead at their Encino home. The official report said suicide. The news was incomprehensible. Friends said Peter had seemed fine, calm, cheerful, planning upcoming projects. There was no note, no warning. For Catherine, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath her feet. Hollywood reacted with shock. Colleagues described Peter as one of the good ones, a lawyer who treated clients like friends. For Catherine, the headlines were agony. The same press that had once adored her now dissected her grief. Cameras parked outside her house. Reporters speculated about her private pain as if it were public property. Those who knew her say she vanished into protective silence. For months, she barely spoke to anyone outside her immediate circle. Her daughters were teenagers, then old enough to understand the loss, but too young to carry its weight. Catherine had to hold everything together even when she was breaking inside. One friend recalled she was living minute by minute, but every morning she got up for her girls. That's who she is. Grief has no logic. It isolates and exhausts. Catherine turned inward. She began long walks through the neighborhood, sometimes at sunrise, sometimes late at night. She visited her church, prayed quietly, and leaned on her faith. She told one interviewer years later, "You never really get over it. You just learn to live with it. My daughters saved me." That period marked the deepest transformation of her life. The woman who had once been a symbol of carefree youth now understood the fragility behind it. The poster girl of joy was now learning how to rebuild from loss. And she did slowly, bravely, quietly. By 2012, Catherine began to reappear. She accepted small television roles not out of ambition but healing. Acting became therapy. Guest spots on Monk Hawaii 5-0 and The Young and the Restless reminded audiences of her warmth and humor. But to those who knew her, her performances carried something new. Gravity. There was empathy in her eyes that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just acting, it was living truth. And as she re-entered Hollywood, something unexpected happened. The public too had changed. Audiences were craving authenticity. Reality TV had burned them out on plastic personas. Suddenly, Catherine's unfiltered candor, the same honesty that once made her too real, felt refreshing. Her interviews were calm, thoughtful, often filled with gratitude. She no longer spoke like a celebrity. She spoke like someone who had survived celebrity. Meanwhile, her legacy had only grown larger. The Dukes of Hazzard reruns continued to draw viewers, and the name Daisy Dukes had entered the dictionary. The Oxford English Dictionary officially defined it as short denim shorts. Music videos, fashion lines, and pop lyrics referenced her. Catherine's creation had transcended her. The image she built in her 20s was now cultural language. But for all the recognition, she never saw much financial reward. Warner Brothers owned the rights to the show's branding. She received no residuals from the global merchandising empire her likeness had fueled. She never expressed resentment. "I did my job and I'm proud of it," she said in a later interview. But her friends say she privately felt a bittersweet ache. Not for the money, but for the principle. She had given television one of its most enduring icons, and yet her own contribution had been written in invisible ink. Still, Catherine refused to become cynical. Instead, she channeled her energy into advocacy. She began supporting children's charities, veterans groups, and mental health awareness campaigns, causes that resonated with her personal journey. She often attended events quietly, avoiding press coverage, preferring to focus on the people she could help. One organizer recalled, "She'd show up early, stay late, talk to everyone. No entourage, no ego." That humility made her beloved among fans and colleagues alike. She didn't posture. She didn't pretend to be above anyone. The same warmth that had once lit up television screens now illuminated her real life. In 2014, she spoke about grief and resilience during a rare television interview. She said, "You learn that life doesn't stop being beautiful just because it hurts. You just have to find a new way to see it." The line captured the heart of her transformation, a woman who had once symbolized perfection, now representing endurance. By her 60s, Catherine had found balance. She continued to make selective appearances, often at nostalgic events honoring classic television. Fans lined up for hours just to thank her. She always greeted them with genuine affection. "People think they're thanking me," she once said, "but I'm the one who's grateful they still remember." When modern debates about Confederate imagery caused some networks to pull the Dukes of Hazzard from rotation, Catherine was asked how she felt. Her answer was nuanced. "The show was never political," she said. "It was about family, humor, kindness. That's what I hold on to." She didn't dismiss the controversy, but she defended the intention behind the work, its sense of fun and heart. Her perspective revealed something rare in Hollywood: grace without bitterness. She didn't rewrite her past or weaponize nostalgia. She simply honored what the show had meant to millions. Today, Catherine Bach stands as one of the few television legends who survived both adoration and obscurity with dignity and tact. She navigated the cruelty of fame, the silence of loss, and the slow climb toward peace, all while remaining unpretentious. Her story is more than a biography. It's a reflection of what the entertainment industry does to women who become symbols. The same system that glorifies youth often erases age. It celebrates sensuality, but punishes authenticity. Catherine lived through all of it and emerged wiser. She showed that it's possible to lose everything fame gives you and still find what it can't take away: your humanity. Even now, when fans revisit her episodes, there's something timeless about her presence. She wasn't just acting. She was embodying a kind of naturalness that television rarely captures. That's why she endures. Behind the shorts, the laugh, the mythology was a performer who believed in decency, a woman who fought quietly to give her character strength and her life meaning. Catherine Bach's legacy isn't just Daisy Duke. It's every woman who was ever underestimated, every performer who was told to smile instead of speak, every soul who found courage in starting over. The poster promised youth. The industry sold perfection. But what remains decades later is grace, resilience, and truth. She had the smile that sold a dream. But behind that smile lived a survivor, one who turned heartbreak into purpose. If stories like this speak to you about fame loss and the will to begin again, stay with us. Because behind every icon lies a story Hollywood never dared to tell.